Hey guys, and welcome. Today we're going to be breaking down the second episode of the Halo TV series, and to be honest, it's actually really good. Now the first episode compared to the second episode is very different in the way they're formatted. The first was the introduction of the Covenant, lots of action, gore and death, and the second episode is more story driven and plot driven. And I've got to say, things are starting to heat up really nicely. I'm actually pretty pleasantly surprised, to be honest, of how good this series is so far. Now, similar to the last episode in the format of this video, I'll be doing a spoiler-free review, which is the first part of this video, alongside a spoiler walkthrough of the episode towards the end. So make sure you guys do check the timestamps down below, and you can skip to whichever part of the review that you want to listen to. Before we get into the video though, guys, it'd be much appreciated if you could consider leaving a like. It'd be very much appreciated. Of course, subscribing for more content as well, for all of the breakdowns of all of the series coming, and just plenty of Halo content coming on the channel, really. And don't forget to check down below in the description for the community Discord server. We're doing a big Season 2 giveaway with a couple of battle passes, different credits and things like that as well. And for you guys to be in for a chance to win that, be sure to join the server. It's completely free. But without further ado, let's get straight into it. Okay, so starting off this video with the spoiler-free review of episode 2 of the Halo TV series. Overall, comparing to the first episode, as I mentioned already, there was no combat or fighting or anything like that in this episode. This was a continuation of the story, understanding what the artifact is that we found in the first episode and what the purpose of it is, and seeing some more of the Covenant leaders and figures as well, which was really cool to see, to be honest. And I've got to say, I've said this before, the CGI is really good in this, and I'm very pleasantly surprised with how good the CGI is in this TV series. Now, I don't think this is a spoiler, but if you guys consider it as a spoiler, then you can skip down below. I'll put the timestamp on screen that you can skip past this. I'm just going to detail what this artifact is that we found in the first episode, and essentially it's something that was very similar to what we've seen before in Halo games, so it's not really that much of a spoiler. So it turns out this artifact is something called a keystone. Now, a keystone can be activated by a reclaimer, which is why it has the reclaimer symbol on it, and this is why that it goes bright blue when the chief touches it. Now, we don't know what technology this is so far. This could be Forerunner technology. We don't have this information as of yet, and I presume later on in the episodes we will find more out about this. But this keystone artifact actually points towards the location of the Halo ring. We haven't seen the Halo ring yet. This is not in episode 1 or episode 2, so it just is dialogue at this point. So we haven't seen anything yet, but that's apparently the overall purpose of this keystone. Within episode 2, we go on to see locations like the rubble in a lot more detail, which, by the way, looks absolutely beautiful. And we're going to meet new characters into the series like Lord Hood, who we love from the games. Soren as well, who's a really cool character within the lore of Halo, and we get to see the introduction slightly of Cortana. Not fully, she's not in the second episode, but we start to see her more introduced into the actual mainline storyline of the TV series in episode 2. Overall, I think the episode was actually really good. I enjoyed it, and I think the story is going in a very interesting direction. I think Pablo plays the role of the Chief so well. I think that if the Chief was someone who would take off his helmet in game, or someone would take off his armor and would see more of a human side of Chief, I would imagine him to be exactly as Pablo is portraying him to be. So I have to say he's doing a very good job, and getting around the fact that it's not Steve Downes' voice, to be honest, I'm over that now. I'm not really bothered by that too much anymore. I just think the acting and the overall storyline is way more impactful and important at this stage. Yes, it is a bummer, and would I like Steve Downes' voice in there? Obviously. You know, Jen Taylor's voice is Cortana, and Steve Downes would have made this way more immersive, but we've got to work with what we've got, okay, guys, and I think Pablo does a great job as the Chief, and I think everyone should give him a chance, to be honest. A very solid second episode, in my opinion, and it was actually noted when, towards the end of episode 1, because a lot of the YouTubers, different creators and press had access to the second episode last week, and they mentioned that the second episode was very fillery and like a filler episode, and I can see why people do think that. There was no combat or anything like that which would have given you more of action scenes or anything like that, and I can kind of see why people would think that that's classed as filler, if you will. But for me, it was good. It didn't feel like a filler episode like I was expecting it to be. But for someone that may not be so in-depth with the lore, they may again think that it could be sort of a filler episode. So I can definitely assure you guys that the third episode will return to combat. I'm not going to spoil how, but just know that there will be some in the third episode. But overall, I'd really recommend it. If you guys haven't watched it already, go check it out, give it a chance. It is really good. Right now, we're going to move on to the spoilers part of the video, so stick around if you want the full episode details. But for those leaving, thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Okay, on to the story spoilers. Episode 2 starts with us looking at the Chief 22 years prior to the TV series taking place, showing all the scars across his body and essentially what the Spartans have to go through to become a Spartan. It then goes on to show that he and a Spartan called Soren were actually planning to escape the facility they are both staying at. Soren wants to escape because he feels as though the Spartans are being brainwashed or programmed and not treated like humans, and basically, as the UNSC regard Chief, a walking killing machine. The plan was for them to both try and escape together and go to a place called the Rubble, but it was last minute where John decided against going. The Chief was about to alert everyone in the compound of Soren leaving. Chief actually gives him 5 minutes to get out of there. Soren then goes and leaves for the Rubble, and John stays behind to fulfill the Spartan 2 program, which is of course where he became the Master Chief. Now, moving on to the end of the first episode, where they slip space into an asteroid field where the Rubble is located. This scene is really sick, and the CGI again is just on absolute par. Now, this is where we see the Rubble for the first time in the show, and it looks really good. Again, I can't get over how good the CGI is on this, and a high budget Halo TV series is what I've always wanted, and this really does fulfill that. The Chief enters and the entire Rubble army raise their weapons and point it at the Spartan. Again, they are fully against the Spartan program, and they just detest any Spartans or UNSC members, and they request their leader to come and confront Chief. And what do we know? Who is that leader? No other than Soren from the very start of the episode. Again, going over how good the Rubble looks, it's really well detailed, and man, I've got to say it again, the CGI in this TV show is so damn good. Later on in this scene, when we explore the Rubble and go to essentially where Soren lives with his family now, which is interesting because Soren was a Spartan, you know, as a family, a wife, and a kid as well. So Chief was a bit shocked when he found this out, but yeah, very cool nevertheless. But in this scene, Chief doesn't just take his helmet off. His entire armor is removed. I didn't expect that, but it looked pretty cool nevertheless. Anyways, now moving on to the next scene where we go onto High Charity and go from the Prophets and the new antagonist's perspective. Now we can see in the trailer where we could see the one elite standing in front of all of the different Prophets, and this is essentially the scene that we can see in this episode. The interesting thing that I took from this is that the new antagonist is essentially doing the talking, not the Prophets in this. So it gets me thinking on what her role is in the Covenant at this moment. Now, we know that she's one of the leaders and one of the main faces in the Covenant, but it's interesting to see that she's commanding and even a higher officer than the elites and what looks to be the Arbiter that we don't know just yet. But yeah, her role hasn't been fully fleshed out yet in the actual series itself, but I'll be interested to stick around and just see what role she actually has, because it hasn't really been explained too much yet. And I've got to say, the Prophets look really good. We have truth, mercy, and regret in this image as well. They all look so well done. Man, whoever did the CGI for these Prophets deserves a pay rise. Anyway, from this point, they go on to give a bit of dialogue around with the relic and what the elite saw in the first episode when he seen the Chief touch this relic. The elite goes on to say that they saw the ring, or a halo ring, when this object was touched, and that this object is actually called a keystone, which is very interesting. We don't have a lot of information around the keystone just yet, but now essentially what this keystone does is it gives the location of the halo ring to the faction that are trying to activate it. So if the Covenant obtain this keystone and they try and lock down the halo ring, then they could potentially use it as a weapon. Now, the Great Journey, we all know the Great Journey, is that they want to try and fire the halo ring, as it's their religious belief that this religious artifact is a part of the Great Journey and they need to fire it in order to fulfill that. So if the Covenant get this keystone and they find out where the ring is, then that's essentially the end of the universe. So that's a big problem for the UNSC. Now, after this scene, we move on to Reach again, and this is in a boardroom with a meeting between the UNSC commanders and different people like that. And in this meeting is where Halsey pitches the idea for Cortana for the first time. Now, this is directly directly going against Admiral Parangosky's orders when telling Halsey to shut down the Cortana project. Halsey was reluctant to do so, and this was essentially her time to pitch the idea to all of the higher up in commands and get Parangosky on board. Admiral Parangosky then agrees to test the Cortana project, see how far it can go and dip their toes into the water, but not fully go ahead until they understand all of the different things that could go wrong with it, because again, it was very unethical to clone humans at the time, and that's what Halsey had done for Cortana. So it's in the water, but we do get a little bit of a teaser and a couple of little glimpses of Cortana in this episode as well, so it's very interesting. Moving on to the next scene, we cut to yet another protagonist that we haven't seen yet, but we've seen in a couple of the trailers and screenshots. Now, this is a rebel that didn't really agree with the path that Quan Ha's father was trying to take the rebels down. So this rebel is essentially another antagonist that I'm sure we'll meet later on into the story. So it'll be interesting to see what part he plays moving forward in the story, but we've only really seen one scene with him at the moment. So at the moment, we're just waiting to understand more about this character, and I'm sure in the third episode, we'll understand a lot more about his roles in the story. So moving back to the scene with the rubble. Now, Soren takes the chief to meet someone who is imprisoned within the rubble called Reth. Reth is mental, he's crazy, and I believe once in the past he was captured and he was aboard a Covenant ship, and he knows a lot about the Covenant, how they work and what they're trying to look for and do. So he's a very good person to take this keystone to see if you knew more information about it, essentially. The interesting part is that when Reth touches this keystone, nothing happens. He mentions that he's not worthy to activate it. Reth tries to destroy the keystone by picking it up and throwing it, but Chief catches it and activates it again, giving John even more flashbacks into his past, and I'll put a couple of screenshots on the screen now as to some of the things that we typically see for those screenshots. Reth then goes on to say to the Chief that he doesn't understand what the Chief is, then mentions that the ring is the end of life as we know it if it's activated, and that it's a weapon that can be used by the Covenant. Reth tells the Chief to destroy the artifact to prevent the Covenant from taking it. Then he also says to also destroy himself. So we'll have to wait and see what that is. But again, it's very similar to some of the games of Halo Combat Evolved, Halo 2. You activate the ring and it will wipe out all sentient life in the universe. So I think the plot really is to stop the Covenant from finding the ring. And I mean, we already knew that was it, but this has just solidified that even further. Chief then leaves Quan on the rubble and activates his beacon for the UNSC to see and find his location. Silver Team came to his location, secured him, and they landed back on Reach, and he was in handcuffs and taken into the UNSC facility. The keystone was then obtained by Halsey and placed into a facility for analysis as well. Halsey and the Chief then start some dialogue about the visions that he's been having when touching this artifact, but she very quickly deflects any acknowledgement of these visions or what they might be, because they don't want John to realise that he was abducted from a younger age and part of the Spartan 2 program, because that's what Soren was saying all along. Soren basically believed that the Spartan 2 program and Halsey was telling complete lies and they were not being honest with the Spartan 2s, and Chief didn't believe it. So if Halsey told Chief the truth, it's going to kick off. So maybe later on in the episodes, that's where we do go with the story. Whilst they're speaking, the new antagonist just starts to strip completely naked in front of us on High Charity. The Halo TV show, ladies and gentlemen. We then also see a scar on her back as well, and I think it's just showing the more human side of this new antagonist, and she knows for a fact that she's different from the Covenant and that she is human, and we'll know a lot more about them in the upcoming episodes. At the end of the episode, we then get our first look at Cortana, the clone of Halsey at the time. So how she forms into Cortana, I don't know at this point, but Halsey's now activated a clone who is Cortana essentially, and in the third episode, we should see Cortana and activated. She opens her eyes, and boom, episode over. But you know what? For what was referenced as a filler episode, Halo lore nerd really appreciated this episode here, mentioning the rubble, Soren, all of these different things as well. It was really, really good. I'm loving the Halo TV show so far, to be honest, and I think they're doing a really good job with it. Now, to wait till next Thursday for another episode, so rip for that. But that's going to conclude my spoiler-free and spoiler review for the Halo TV series. Let me know what you think down below, everyone. I'd be very interested to know your thoughts and opinions. We're always going to get those people that say that the TV show's crap without watching it. But in honesty, it's pretty good. I would really recommend you going to watch it, spend a bit of time with it, and just see what you think about the show itself. I'm a big fan, it doesn't resemble anything really to do with the games. It has references, sound effects, things like that, but the storyline is nothing that we've seen before, really. This is completely separate, and it's kind of refreshing to have something different in Halo, considering it's not canon, but something to take your minds off Infinite and stuff like that. So this is a really good way to do so. So let me know anything down below, guys. Drop a like if you did enjoy, subscribe if you're brand new, check this community Discord server in the description for giveaways coming for Season 2 of Halo Infinite, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Speak soon, and take care.